At the edge of downtown Bellingham, a few steps south of the legendary Herald Building, there comes the area known affectionately to locals as the Alley District. It is a couple of acres that lie between North State Street and the trailhead of the South Bay Trail. It is a couple of acres of art and craft and business and the close community of Bellinghamsters. Rough-hewn, the aged buildings within those acres are beloved of their occupants, they who are all bound together by their friendships. With leaking roofs and aging frames, there is little doubt that in the not-too-distant future, these buildings will give up their ghosts, and as ghosts go, so will go their tenants. Let then these images and these voices stand as a record of the chaotic accumulations in those buildings of pieces and parts which have been bent, molded, shaped, heated, cooled, colored, and cajoled by craftsmanship, by creativity, and by artistry into beautiful things, into products, and into services for those Bellinghamsters who drive through, walk through, and bicycle through the soon-to-be-gone Alley District. So, to take a last look, begin with a walking tour of the district. From the Herald sign, the sign that's high and prominent above the city by day and lighted in blue by night, head 2 blocks southward to the bus stop at the corner of North State Street and East Laurel. Cross the street to a blue building newly trimmed in white, and there begin your tour. There, lined up on 3 shelves within framed windows, are the first clues of what goes on within the Oyster Creek Canvas Company. A display of old sewing machines in the windows, some of which are family heirlooms, some of which are from the beginnings of the company. If you be a local boatsman, step inside to see what all can be done with canvas and metal frames, and see the small but impressive gaggle of the cheeriest and fastest working of craftmeisters, or should we say artisans, and hear then from the sailor who started it all.
So my shop's called Oyster Creek Canvas. We started in 2000, right around 2000, I guess. And we do custom marine canvas here. We do some sewing of bags. We do some prototype work, but mostly we concentrate on custom marine canvas. I've been working on boats since, like 20 years or something like that. So used to work at top to bottom, diving, and did that for a long time. My buddy rented this space that's mine now, but and he had a wood shop in here, and we started off with one old sewing machine, and just kind of crash course, started learning how to do jobs. Then we did some tent work for a year, after 9/11 we did a bunch of work doing response tents, and that was a disaster response tents. We got a big contract, and that kind of like gave us a boost so we could kind of grow the business a little bit. And then from then on, we've just been taking on all kinds of jobs and steadily growing for 17 years now, I guess. We've won some national awards, an international award for some stuff we've built. So it's mostly custom marine canvas is what we specialize in. But as you can see from the rest of the shop, there's all kinds of stuff we can do here. We got 9, 10 specialty sewing machines, and got grommet setters, and you can pretty much build about anything in here. All of our business is word of mouth. I've been in the harbor for 25 years, and just word travels down there, and you know, you do good work and people tell each other, and that's what we try and do, try and make a nice product, and people tell each other about it, and we get work that way. Over the years, we've done work for everybody, just crazy jobs. Like we've done work for the Coast Guard. We've done really unique jobs that just need a space like this where you can create something out of nothing. So yeah, we've done government contracts. We've done stuff for the refineries. We've done stuff for the city. We've done stuff for the county. Yeah, all kinds of government stuff. But the past probably 5 or 6 years, it's probably pretty much focused on the marine side of it.
Next door to Oyster Creek Canvas Company, beneath a charming bay window, the kind you don't see much of anymore, is a sign, which, if you look closely, is made of tile. It is no surprise, then, to see that the name of the Alley District neighbor is Possibilities in Tile. The curiosity about it is too much to not look into the window, where you might see the work in progress of a tile floor, or a wall, or a fireplace being assembled. This company is what we call a one-man band. Or should we say, in this case, a band of one woman, of truly artistic talent. The inventory of colored tiles, as we can see from the window, is large, and the machinery used is relatively simple. The design of tile creations, however, is pure artistic intensity. The execution of it is tedious and consumes the artist in the process.
I started doing tile a long time ago, back in about 1990, and I worked for a contractor, and we did all kinds of things, we did a lot of tile. And the first time I ever cut a tile on a straight cut saw, it was so easy. I just thought, wow, if it was that easy to cut a straight line, I could cut anything. So a long time later, 20-something years later, I started to actually cut anything. And as I evolved as a tile installer and a specialty contractor, there would be opportunities to solve problems. And there's inevitably on some jobs there'd be problem areas, and we just started solving them creatively. And until finally I found a person who was willing to let me really go for it and make some trees for their fireplace, my friend Leah. And because I guess the idea is that anything's possible, right? Mm-hmm. And cutting stone it's so neat because it's stone. You don't expect to see it in the shape of a bird's feather or a leaf or a branch of a tree, but anything's possible. If you can cut a branch, you can cut anything, right? I was employed as a laborer, a construction laborer for a contractor out in Friday Harbor for probably 6 or 7 years. And then I had a big period of time that I wasn't working in the trades at all. So it was like at least 10 years, probably more like 12 years, where I was having babies and, got married, and I traveled a little bit. And but when we got back to live here in the Northwest, I started working for a contractor again, and then just decided that I should be my own contractor. So that was the first leap, was actually getting my contractor's license and installing regular tile in houses, custom tile, but squares and rectangles and in special patterns all over the place. And then when my friend Leah gave me the opportunity to create trees on her fireplace wall out of slate, that was the first art installation. That was the first true art installation, I guess. And since then we've just been adding more and more to the process. And so for about 10 years now, 8 to 10 years, I've been working out of my garage. And until a couple years ago, I quit doing straight installation on houses, new houses and remodels, and it was just art. And in the past few years, I've had the opportunity to do 4 or 5 or maybe 6 now, public art installations in Alaska, in Wyoming, in Utah, and even more recently, I had an opportunity to move into this new space that I love, in this beautiful old building and in this fantastic neighborhood full of really great people. I was really pleased. I'd only been here for about a week or so, and neighbors from all over the place started coming in to say hello and greet me and welcome me to the neighborhood. I knew I was moving into this wonderful space, but I didn't really realize I was moving into this wonderful neighborhood too. So that was a pleasant surprise.
How did you get new customers when you started out?
You know, well, new art customers?
Well, new customers for your business.
For my business, yeah, because as a contractor, you just start installing, you know, and if you do a pretty good job, then people refer you, or I work with a lot of designers and over again for years and years and years, and I've worked with the same builders over and over again. And then having my work evolve from tile installation to tile art installation, it's been really through the same people. And the same people have encouraged me to do more and more of it. And then particularly the designers that I work with, and occasionally the builders too, they'll have special projects or special clients that they're like, I'm pretty sure they're gonna want something really fabulous, you know, really unique for their fireplace. That's a very common place for me to do something really big and ornate, is a fireplace surround, and you know, sometimes 12 feet tall and stuff. But yeah, very often through designers will bring their clients to me, and then periodically previous clients will have friends who call me. I have a Facebook page, I have a website, and I occasionally have, you know, work come through that. But it's really a lot of word of mouth and people that I know and who know me and who have seen my work.
Do you have a significant investment in tools, or is it a rather simple
Yeah,
process?
I mean, it's really a pretty simple process. I think my most expensive tool is my ring saw, and when I bought it, I think it was about $1,100 with the stand and everything. So, you know, that's not cheap, but it's really not that expensive, you know.
Not to start a business.
Certainly not,
Right.
no. And, you know, having worked from home, there wasn't much overhead at all. I mean, materials, and materials can cost quite a bit, but.
For somebody that doesn't, like myself, doesn't know anything about this, what kind of materials are you using? What kind of rock or stone?
Well, I use tiles. So I'm a tile setter, I'm a tile installer, and I use tile. But tile's a really broad statement because it can be made out of almost anything. And so, but the most common materials I work with are porcelain, glass, and natural stone. And I don't take clay and mold it into and put it in the kiln. If I'm using a porcelain or a ceramic tile, I usually I'll buy the material in the colors and sizes that I need, and then I cut them apart and put them back together.
Oh,
So I'm working with tile, you know, like, even though it's like maybe a piece of slate or a piece of alabaster or a piece of basalt stone, I'm not taking a boulder and slicing it up, you know, I'm taking that material that a factory somewhere in the world has made into a tile, and then I mess with it.
okay.
I manipulate it, I cut it up and put it back together again.
Oh, okay. So you actually do cut it. You continue to cut.
Yes, yeah, I cut, and my work really started because, you know, when you're working in a home, there's places that need special cutting done, you know, like maybe you know, it's just perfectly in a doorway on a remodel, or maybe there's a special hole for a faucet to come through that has very little room for air, and I was pretty good at that, at just cutting right on where I needed to be, and it just kind of translates into the art, because I just make a picture and then we just cut it out, and it's a pretty simple process. It's harder to come up with the picture than to actually cut it out. And
Yeah. Can I ask you, you have next to you, a really pretty design. And my question is, do you design it and then put the tile together, or are you designing it as you're putting the tile
No,
together?
it's definitely pre-planned.
Oh.
It was completely pre-planned, especially with a project like this one. This one is glass, as you can see,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a micro mosaic. These tiles are only about 1/8 of an inch square, and we nipped these pieces of glass by hand in order to make them this size, and to make them so that outside edges weren't perfectly square, too. But yeah, I took the picture, and I started with a photograph that I had taken on a walk last fall.
Nice.
Yeah, and for this kind of installation, it's completely different. This is something that's relatively new for me, which I'm really enjoying. It's kind of a little bit tedious,
I would say.
but I love seeing the finished result. I did a really big one at a small college in Wyoming that is a sunset sky and a mountainscape, and it's like 60 feet long. But the tiles are a whole inch, so it wasn't quite as tedious.
So now where would this piece go?
I think I'm going to put this one outside of the shop on the wall, just outside below my sign for now.
Oh,
Yeah, just kind of share it with the community, and because I just created this on my own because I was interested and curious of what it would look like, and so there's not a client waiting for it or a school or whatever. It's just for fun.
so how does that piece withstand the weather if you put it outside?
Well, we do have an awning, kind of it's not going to get too harsh of a weather right there, but it's tile, the Roman ruins. It's practically all that's left, right? Is the mosaics on the floors, and of course you can see that there's wood in this application as well to make it so I can pick it up and move it around and put it in a different spot. But yeah, it's glass, just like our windows. The weather's not gonna harm it, and the grout, can weather a really long time before it's ever a problem for it. And the substrate on the board it's installed on is a cement board. It's a hardy board. So, and then it's attached to some plywood to make it more mobile, give it some dimensional stability so it doesn't flex very much when it is.
And one last question.
Sure.
How did you decide to come to Bellingham, and are you happy that you did?
Well, I grew up over in Friday Harbor, and I happened to meet a man from Bellingham when I was up in Alaska, and we got married.
Ooh,
So when we came home to Bellingham, not out to the San Juan Islands.
I see.
And I love it. I love Bellingham. I can't even imagine. I've been in a lot of places, and in my young adult life, I lived in quite a few places, and I love it here.
How often do you meet an artisan who has been a purveyor to a king and queen? Then skip across the narrow East Rose Street. To those old enough to remember, there stands the evidence of an old 1920s one-owner, one-pump gas station. The kind where the owner pumped your gas and cleaned your windshield and fixed your flat tire. Inside, instead of grease-stained hands repairing tires, there sits another one-woman band. It is Sophie, and it is Sophie's gold mine. At a brightly lit bench with jeweler's tools, this woman, a mystery of the delicate arts of silver, gold, and platinum and diamonds, creates for mere mortals such as we bejeweled rings and adornments fit for kings and queens.
I was born in Finland, and then later on ended up in Sweden. And then from there, I wanted to do something crazy, so I came to United States as an au pair and met my husband at that time, and we were in Seattle. And then later on, I decided to go on my own, and I got an opportunity to work in Bellis Fair Mall as a self-employed. And after 4 years working there, it was time to move up to Bellingham. When we actually lived in Finland, one of my really good friends, a young boy, his father was a jeweler, and I had an opportunity to go to his shop. And at that time, I was 8 years old, and I knew this was it. I was good with my hands, and wasn't quite as good at school, to be honest with you. So that was my thing, and we moved to Sweden. And when I was 14, I went to a jeweler and asked them if they could teach me because school wasn't quite my thing. So they were very impressed. They took me in, and I was able to do apprenticeship for 2 years with them. And there, when I turned 16, I actually got into a jewelry school in a place called Mjölby. They will take in 16 students every year, and I made it. On my, I sent in things that I had made as apprenticeship, and that's how I got in. And that was a 3-year program. After 3 years, we went out for another apprenticeship, and that I did in Stockholm, and got a job over there and worked with them for quite a few years. While I was working in Stockholm for this company called Kose Guldsmedja, it's just right outside Stockholm, and I got a great opportunity over there. We had a chance to make a full set for the Swedish Queen Sylvia. And like I said, I was an apprenticeship, so I get to pull the wire and do all the dirty work, but I was able to be part of it. It was kind of really neat. And after that, the shop got to use the Royal Jeweler name with their business. After a little bit, I got bored, and I wanted to get some wild things done in my life before I settled down. I ended up in Seattle as an au pair. I thought I was going to go to Washington, D.C., but somehow there's a Bellevue in Washington, D.C., and there's a Bellevue in Washington. That's a long story.
How does what's going to go on across the street, how is that going to affect you?
Well, it's always sad to see old buildings to go. I actually like this neighborhood. When I left the mall, I wanted to be part of downtown, but not in the center of downtown, and that's when I picked this area. What I like about this area here where I am right now, I have my own parking. Also right in front of me, we have free parking. The little cute buildings right across, I got to know my neighbors. They've been there for a long time. We have a good relationship. They kind of keep an eye on me, I guess. And unfortunately, they keep more on me than I do on them sometimes, but that's okay. But package comes, they take care of it. I really will miss my neighbors. The road right in front of me was to be the main highway between Fairhaven and Bellingham. And I believe this was a Texaco or Esson station at that time. Like I say, it was built in 1920s. The owners took out the tanks, so now I have flowers outside instead for the pumps. I think they took them out a long time ago.
Tell me about how you advertise. Do you advertise?
I only do one big thing a year. I actually have reindeers every year. They come here. This year they're going to land on first Friday of December. They usually bring 2 reindeers. You get to touch them. You get to get a picture taken for free. We have cider. We have cookies. Radio station here. We do a big, huge food drive. And it's more for saying thank you to the community than anything else. And it's a lot of fun. There's times when the first time we did it was actually pretty funny. I had baked 300 cookies. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, Sophie, you're going to eat cookies for the rest of your life." And I was like, well, I rather have too many than not enough. And my golly, they came. We had over 1,000 people showing up. After 1 hour, we were out of cookies. So I called a friend of mine, and she scrambles to Fred Meyer's, and she did probably 3 trips. Finally, she bought all the cookies they had. And we tried to keep up with it, but it was a lot of fun. I think that's probably the best memory I ever had from the reindeers.
Directly across the street between Washington Divers and BPRP Motorcycle Repair Shop, a narrow alley from North State Street leads down an interesting and artistic 50 paces to South Bay Trail. That junction relieves one of the anchors of the Alley District, a small business well known to the community as the Hub. It's actually a nonprofit business dedicated to the proposition that the environment in this northwest corner of the continental United States is very well served by the legion of two-wheelers who shun fossil-powered transportation whenever possible. Crammed into small but efficient rooms are pieces, parts, and bins of inventory, workbenches, tools and vices and levers, and people who love bicycles. Some of those people are there to use the facilities to work on their own bicycles. Some don't know nuts from bolts, so if needs be, somebody will help them or do the work for them.
I came to Bellingham to change the channel of my life. I grew up in Connecticut, lived there for still more than half my life, and I had a job with the state of Connecticut in the Department of Corrections, and figured I worked there for 7 years right out of high school and figured I'd want to see what else was out in the world. Bellingham, I literally fold the map in half of the United States, America, and I chose the cities of Boston, and I corresponded that with a city on the other side of the country, which was Seattle. And I drove out here knowing nothing about Bellingham. I drove out to Seattle, got to Seattle, and it was overwhelming. I just kept driving, never even stopped my car, kept driving north to Bellingham. I love where I live. I love the geographic location. I love the sense of community in Bellingham too. Since moving here to Bellingham, I feel like I've learned an awful lot about myself and the planet in which I live on. Met a lot of wonderful people, and they still are part of my life, a lot of them, and it's just been a great experience to be here. What would I change if I had a magic wand? I suppose if I could change anything about my world with a magic wand, it would be the way that humans relate to each other. So I'm a big fan of engagements and relationships. To me, that's the utmost important thing, and it's the most important thing in life. It trumps money, it trumps fame, fortune, etc. Relationships between human beings, in my opinion, is what makes us, is the reason why we exist and why we go on existing. Without that, then in my opinion, there's no point in existing. The organization I work for is the Hub Community Bike Shop. It's a nonprofit organization. It's a private nonprofit, and the function of the organization is to essentially divert the waste stream when it comes to bicycles. So that's one important function, is a waste stream diversion. And so we essentially are garbage folk here. People drop off bikes and things that go with bikes, and we process them. So we either take the bikes apart and we recycle parts, we take the bikes apart, we catalog the parts for reuse or resale. We refurbish a lot of bikes as we can, so either with new and used parts, lots of love and labor. Nobody owns the Hub Community Bike Shop. It is a nonprofit organization. Nonprofit means, in essence, that there is no ownership. There's no sense of ownership. It's a collective mindset, essentially, where basically the organization does for the community what the government falls short on, and then the nonprofit organization can pick up the slack where the government or some civic entity could have that slack. As a matter of course, we do receive a lot of donations from our community. Our community is about 90,000, a little less than 90,000 strong in the city of Bellingham. And then in the county, it's a little over 100,000, so we're just short of 200,000, I believe, Whatcom County wide in this area. And so we get an awful lot of bike donations here. Essentially, we get more donations than we can possibly handle and capacitate. So some of the bikes get put into a situation that's outside of their scope of existence. For example, we've created a frame fence in our side yard that's currently about 12 feet tall, I'd imagine, 3 or 4 feet deep. And that's a small percentage of the bikes that we've retained. Most of the bikes that would have gone to that frame fence have gone to be recycled. And at this point, essentially, I just have been hoarding the bikes in our yard for some future purpose. I believe that the current purpose and the present purpose and the most impactful purpose is that you look down on those bikes from an upper sidewalk. It's on street level, and when people walk by, they look down in the pit of bicycles and see the magnitude of what we as the humans have created, and are able to, therefore, I believe, see the magnitude of the problem that exists. I believe that the thought process that goes into it largely falls short of that sort of comprehension, if you will, of what it means. But I always believe that any kind of interaction with that or engagement with that creates like a sense of awareness, and then it creates hopefully a question mark in that individual. And then in the utopian world, the question mark comes into us, and we're able to have a conversation about it. The Hub Community Bike Shop employs currently 3 folks. We typically have an employee rate of 3 to 6 people. 6 people at the height of our financial success, I'd say, which has come and gone, and it does come and go. Year to year is different, based on lots of factors outside of our control, of course. Currently, we're down to 3 staff, and we get a lot of staff from other organizations that are supported by those organizations, such as WorkSource. Sometimes we get developmentally disabled folks that come in and work a couple hours a week for some pay. Typically, we provide that pay. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit towards them. And it's, again, the idea is that it's that individual's engagement with their community is the most important. The name of the area that we reside in is a self-dubbed neighborhood called the Alley District. We've created it as a neighborhood organization, a loose-knit organization, approximately 5 years ago, where we've existed here for 15 years as a community bike shop. Other really great individuals have moved into our neighborhood. We're surrounded by housing, typically more modern housing built within the last decade. That's semi-inspiring, not very inspiring in most of our opinion, but it could be better. I have the belief that the Alley District, our neighborhood, is a bit of an oasis in the midst of that housing project that's happening, the development and infill, which is a great idea as an idea and in theory, but I always believe it could be done so much better. I think it could be done more creatively, more durably, more at a higher inspiration level, etc. So the Alley District is a nice respite, I think, for folks to come and interact with people that live in what I would say on the ground more, and are doing things that are considered Renaissance at this point, like working with our hands, which are, my wrists hurt, my hands hurt. We do rent our space. We rent our space from Daylight Properties / Oakland LLC. They're a property owner in Bellingham that owns several properties in Bellingham and around the state and even in the country on some level. They've been really great to us, like, truth be told, since we've been here. This shop has been on a month-to-month lease for 15 years, which is a bit tenuous, very tenuous. But nonetheless, they've been really good to us and easygoing, so we are able to exist here at sub-market rates. And I'd say we're in a sub-market rate environment to coincide with that. And we've been operating largely on a don't ask, don't tell situation, where for the amount of rent that we do pay, which is not a lot, it's not a little, it's somewhere in between, we just take care of things down here. So have operated in that presumption for the whole time. So 15 years a month to month, could be better. I believe our presence affects the community in a very positive, largely a positive way. We do have our shortcomings. This is a very overwhelming situation. We receive a lot of stuff. There's a lot of activity in here. I speak for myself. I work nonstop, I feel like, often. This place never leaves my mind. It never leaves my heart. And when I'm in the community, I'm always engaged with what happens here, and it's always in the back of my mind. And when I'm talking and relating to other people, this is something that I've been known for. I think that, again, overwhelmingly, we affect the community positively, if for nothing else, that we become an institution here. That even if people disagree or agree with the way that we operate or the way that we treat them or whatever, that the fact that we're here, that this shop exists, that this space exists, is more important than our business practices. I think a large part of our success at the Hub Community Bike Shop is definitely our location. We're located on the South Bay Trail in Bellingham, which is arguably, and actually not arguably, proven to be the most widely used and interactive trail in the city. It's a trail that runs along the waterfront more or less. It's an old railroad grade trail it's above the waterfront and drops down to the waterfront to a park in Bellingham, one of the most popular parks in Bellingham for sure, Boulevard Park. It's a mecca of activity in the spring and summer. In the spring and summer, like, truth be told, I personally typically don't even ride my bike through there because it's so busy that it's almost impossible to get through there on a bicycle. And the elevated activity of that park, which I've seen develop over the past decade or so, is a very amazing thing to me. It's one of the best amenities in our city, I believe. And this trail, also the South Bay Trail, is one of the best amenities. So for us to exist on a trail, that's our street. Basically, our street as a bike shop is a public greenway trail, and really couldn't get any better than that. We've only advertised when we felt like it was our responsibility to. We've advertised in the Walk and Watch, and that's it in the past. We don't do that anymore. We don't have the need to advertise because, in my opinion, if you're on your bike or walking, you're going to find us. If you're in your car, maybe you won't.
Well, we just started building this bike yesterday. We just had the frame and put all the parts on. So right now we're putting on the cable and housing for shifting and brakes.
It's nice because they have a lot of tools that I don't have at home, and they have a lot of resources that I don't have at home.
I'd say our primary customers are, like, honestly, college students. We get a lot of college students down here. The cool thing about it is that college students, I believe, are typically more open-minded in a lot of ways. So when they come in here, a lot of college students that come in here really adhere to what's happening down here, the vibe, the philosophy. It's grassroots. It's kind of gritty. It's a really safe and welcoming environment. I believe the staff, the people working here are amazing. Also compassionate, etc. Another strong component of our customer base are indigent folks in the community. One thing that the Hub offers is low-income subsidies. So it's, again, like a pretty loose-knit program, but if somebody comes in and they've got a letter or are accompanied by an advocate for that individual that can verify their income challenges, then we can subsidize a bicycle for them and or service to whatever level the subsidy has to be to reflect their needs. And we can operate on a sliding scale largely like that. The benefit of being a nonprofit and being more or less self-governed is that we can be very flexible in our business practices. The things that keep people coming back here, again, I think is the culture that we provide on some level. When we first started doing this 15 years ago at the Hub, the bike culture in Bellingham was, in my opinion, very different. It was a little more diverse. Anymore, I feel like Bellingham is becoming more and more of a glossy, if you will, community. There's less blue collar activity, a lot of retirement activity. Again, a lot of student forces are in this community. So we've people, I think, come here for that kind of breath of fresh air that consumers don't often get to enjoy. If you come in the Hub Bike Shop, nobody is hounding you to help you because typically we're so busy we can't even do that. We can't capacitate that. The cool thing about this place is that people have to find us. They have to seek us out. They have to come to us. They have to engage with us in that conversation. We're not jumping on anybody to get their dollars. If anything, we're going to jump on people to get them to adhere to that engagement. The things we offer our customers are honesty, which can be brutal sometimes. If somebody comes in with a bike that's just not worth fixing, we are just honest about it. The thing about this shop relative to other shops is, again, We operate as a collective, largely. Everybody's got a pretty fair shake in the say of what goes on here. We respect each other's hard work in this place, and if somebody comes in and we believe that they deserve an honest opinion. So the thing that we can offer largely is that, I mean, everybody that works in here, in my opinion, is a perfectionist. We spend plenty of time in details, and we often need our shirts in that because we're often not getting compensated for that time. But the details to us are very important. And the bikes that we work on are bikes that were built in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s currently, and they have their own challenges that honestly a lot of bike shops wouldn't even know how to handle. I believe it's not rocket science, it's relatively simple, but we don't always just replace things. We try hard to fix things. So I think that one thing that sets us apart from other bike shops is that we do focus on trying to fix things and making things work for as long as they can, being honest with people about how long that may be to try to work with their budget. The other thing that we offer here is that the other bike shops don't offer sometimes is we will do the work while the customer watches us and are able to ask questions, which to me is powerful. So we get to empower individuals with information about their transportation, which is invaluable to me. The irony is that we often charge less when we're doing that. So we don't charge by the credit hour, which I often joke we should, because this is an education, you know. So that's in my opinion, a big point of what we do. The other thing we do that's unique, I believe, is that we do refurbish bikes. We essentially build a custom bike for every customer. We take the bikes completely apart and we reassemble the bike. So if there's anything wrong with the bike, we can catch it to every small detail because we're taking it all off the bike, every component, putting it back on, making sure it works as well as it can. And if it doesn't, then we replace it with something that will fit that need. So for somebody to come in and get a custom bike for under $500 is a pretty cool thing. What we offer folks too in that vein is a relationship. Again, if you buy a bike from a retailer, and there's a time and a place for that, of course, but if you buy a bike from a retailer, what you don't get to do is meet the person that actually made your bike. The people at the bike shops assemble the bikes somewhat, and not even fully. They put a wheel on, put the handlebars on, adjust the brakes, whatever. Typically it comes fully adjusted for the most part with some like small nuances. What you get in here is you get a relationship with the manufacturer of your bicycle. You don't get that hardly anywhere else without spending thousands of dollars for a custom frame, custom parts, etc. Some of the obstacles that stand in our way of being more successful in meeting the challenges we face are simply a sense of permanence. So our situation, we've been month to month in our building for 15 years. It's never affected me psychologically. I know that in some ways, in theory, a situation like that will wear somebody down because there's always the question of when will this day be our last day. I've always run on the premise that there is no last day, that the last day is definitely the last day, and while we're here we might as well keep doing what we're doing, put our best foot forward, keep our intentions real and true to our community and the people we serve, and with that we can't go wrong. Definitely we had a sense of permanence, our shop and our space. I do believe strongly that we could empower more people. We could do way more with what we have. We're being renters and again being on a month-to-month lease for a long time. It definitely offers some challenges where we can only invest so much of ourselves in our space as well. And unfortunately, and with that said, if somebody's to look around our space and our property, the changes and the improvements we made essentially reflect an idea of permanence and that we're not going anywhere. So even if we're out of this property, when we have to move, the shop has to move somewhere else, then there's no way that we're going to stop doing what we're doing. And why there's no way we're going to stop doing what we're doing for the reasons that we're doing it, if that makes sense. So we're bound and destined, I'd say. And myself personally, I feel like I have an obligation to my community for all it's done to me. So this is all payback for me. And I think that the reason why we exist on this earth is, again, those relationships that we have with each other. Because without that, there really is nothing else, you know.
What are you doing?
Have you wondered how an orderly universe, mathematically perfect, artistically glorious, evolved from some primeval chaos? Then wonder no more. Wander instead across the alley from the hub. Up a set of wooden stairs at the back of a creaky old building, you will see inside an earthly sample of the evolution of chaos to creation. It is a man's artistry in wood. In his case, wood doors and wooden screen doors and glossy wood bicycle fenders and benches and tables.
My name is Tom Anderson, and I moved to Bellingham in 1979. I was pregnant with my significant other. We didn't like the city. We were Los Angeles area. And so we decided to move to Bellingham. It was green and next to the ocean and a beautiful area. I started my woodworking business in Southern California, but moved it to Bellingham. I make wooden Victorian screen doors, hardwood screen doors, that I send all over the United States. Have been doing that since the beginning. I've been recognized in 28 magazines, national magazines, and published in 4 different books in all public libraries because of the unique product I have developed. I started making wooden bicycle fenders. They were not available anywhere, and decided I was thinking about them for a long time, and I'm an avid bicyclist for many years. Have never stopped, actually, since childhood. But I'm an avid mountain biker and commuter in the community as well. So I decided to make these wooden bike fenders that would be functional, stylish, and durable for your bike, to beautify your bike. And it's been very successful. The only thing it has done is I need to get more people to work for me. But as we all know, the labor is very high for people to come and work for you for this type of product. All types of wood products anymore are being very much mass produced or limited to any kind of production because of the labor intensiveness, or the jobs go overseas, in which I don't want to see at all. Well, this building I've been in I've been very fortunate to be in it because of the inexpensive rent, but on the other hand, it's falling down as it's leaks, there's no heat, there's no insulation. It's working in a big barn. But again, it's dry enough for me to maintain what I do and keep going. Yes, the duration of this property is very limited. It's like a burning candle, and we're down to the last inch. It's a collective of people on this block. We all habitate or maintain a business on this block. And there are, I think, 13 different businesses here on this block. And I've always had the plan, the inspiration, forwardness to want to buy the block as a group, to turn it into a commercial land trust for the arts. And the arts in all aspects, health arts, healing arts, mental arts, all physical arts of all kind. There's a recycled bike shop on the property, which is the hub. There's a metal artist on the property, which is it's just a wonderful group of people that have a photographer here on the property, an arborist or nursery of local plants are here on the property. All these things should be really brought together and have a place for in the community that isn't threatened by what's happening on the rest of Bellingham, the gentrification of what is happening in Bellingham. So I want to have a multi-story shop space, communal living space available. This block, like I said, have all these businesses on it, and several of us have got together and formed a loose-knit but collective that we called and labeled it Block 52, because Block 52 is an indicator on the city map of development. And each block has a number, and we're Block 52, that's all there is to it. So we've kind of brought that into our group, calling us Block 52. And if Block 52 could acquire the funding gifted to us to develop this property to the arts, as I was saying, I think the feeling of Bellingham would change immensely. There is no central spot for Bellingham to have the arts. There are sporadic places around that have tiny little collectives of this and that, but not a place where they all work, all display their pieces, have a amphitheater, have a lecture space, so people from all over, and I mean internationally, can come and display their arts and show, demonstrate their abilities to all sorts of people. And to draw more of that international crowd to Bellingham, I think is only a plus-plus situation.
Are you ready for one man's viewpoint of the value of time and the quality of things with which to fill that time? Leave your foray into creation from chaos, step outside, and walk north past the painted images on the side of the building. There you will see a big opened garage door at the rear of another old building. Now have a first-hand look at artistry in iron. One man's alternate utility of his well-honed skills. Skills trained for commerce, but dedicated to art. It is the place called Altility. He tells the story that he was drawn to Bellingham by this broken-down old barn in its downtown. A downtown of people rich in artistic and environmental culture.
I'm from Vermont State originally. Grew up in a rural, small mountain environment, and which instilled a sense and appreciation of the natural environment and exploring mountains and forests. Then moved on to art school in New York State, where I studied sculpture and got involved in metalworking and glassworking and learning how to make things. And immediately moved out west after that in search of bigger mountains and more exploration. All of that life process instills inspiration in the work that I do. So I'm both searching for an environment that inspires me in recreation and in art. I moved to Seattle at the time and worked as a hired glass artist there. I then hiked the Pacific Crest Trail and got to see what the North Cascades were all about, and thought to myself that someday I would move to this region. While I was on the trail, I saw Mount Baker way off in the distance, and somebody I was standing next to said, well, there's a town there called Bellingham. It wasn't for many years that I came here, because I subsequently moved to Portland and worked there as a glass artist, and then started my business in 2010 doing custom metalwork. Lived in Portland, I started my business in 2005 doing custom metalwork, and then decided to make the move up to Bellingham in 2010. Moved to Bellingham in spring of 2010. A year prior, I noticed this building, this vacant barn right downtown, and it felt like magic to me. And there was this sense that I belonged in this community in part because of this building. And a year later, it was still available. I decided to rent 2 giant moving trucks, move all my equipment up here one weekend, and the rest has been history. Lo and behold, there's artisans all around here, and I've created the best friends in my life and have had the best professional experience I could have imagined. So about half of this equipment I acquired while I was in Portland, and the way I've operated through my career is I have invested in some of these machines on a project-to-project basis where the budget of that project allocates the funds required to get the machine to create the project. That was a way for me to, one, afford some of these machines and to justify the expense. After that project's complete, lo and behold, I own this piece of equipment and it's in heavy use ever since. Also, I should mention that as a metal worker, I make a lot of the tools that I require to operate. A lot of these things are custom-made machines that I've made in-house, specific to my processes or specific to the building, and hope to carry them on and slowly build a repertoire of machines and a facility that allows me to operate the processes that I appreciate. One thing you'll notice in my shop, all of this equipment is specific to free-forming processes, sculpting curves, organic shapes, forms and processes that I'm inspired to work within sculpturally. If I need 90, 45-degree bends, then I work with another shop to do that, or laser cut processes, I might work with someone else. So I have specified within this limited square footage processes that I'm inspired to do artistically and focus my investments within that realm. Moving to Bellingham and beginning my business here was an enormous leap of faith that the community would be supportive of what I do, that I would connect with the community culturally, that I would appreciate the mountains, and lo and behold, there's water here and all this adventure. The hard decision-making process boiled down to this being the right move for me. And boy, was it ever, because this community welcomed me in with open arms and has allowed me to grow my business artistically in ways that I never expected would happen. It's always been a goal of mine to impact my community as a sculptor. Bellingham has welcomed me and is allowing me to do that, and has allowed me to grow artistically, has allowed me to host events, to collaborate with other artists in town, and professionally support the work that I do. Moving from Portland to Bellingham required me to lease this building in a leap of faith that the business would work out. I gave my notice at my current space in Portland, moved everything up here, and began immediately rehabbing this building. I needed a new roof because there were about 20 leaks. It needed new sheetrock. So before actually even moving to this space, I lived in the office on the weekends. I would come up here on the weekends and start preparing this building for me to operate, which required putting electrical in, building walls, repairing the roof, windows, things like that. It was very much a clean, blank slate for me to move into. One thing I should mention, as an artist and as a creative tradesperson, it's very important to have a raw building with an adequate square footage that you are able to move into and build to suit. Nobody is going to offer a building that's perfect for my processes. I would need to create that out of the building. And what you get in return is a very competitive below market rate price on these buildings. We rented as is, which was a handful of upgrades that were required that all came out of my pocket. But that was exactly what I was looking for, to create something from scratch, to turn this into my future studio. We currently reside as collective businesses in a historic warehouse district here in Bellingham that was created, this building in particular, in the late teens, early 20s of the 20th century. So it's about a 100-year-old building. The direction of Bellingham is refurbishing historic buildings that can be refurbished, or new construction of buildings like this that are potentially refurbishable. The writing has been on the wall since I moved here, and fortunately some businesses have been down here far longer than I have. But we have reached the period in Bellingham's development history where historic warehouse district like this is on the chopping block and slated for redevelopment. To no surprise, but to our chagrin, we have reached the chapter where we are now the final tenants of this district, and within a 6 to 12 month span, these buildings will be toppled and housing will take its place. I'd say that the risk in this redevelopment process is that this collection of artists and creative tradespeople will scatter, that the impact that we have within our community will dissolve because we will be dislocated from a group, an organized effort where we can have great impact collectively, into something where we are scattered throughout the community and working independently, quietly on our own, not in the downtown core where we can have tremendous cultural impact within Bellingham. What Bellingham is going to lose with the redevelopment of this creative artisan district is a collective, inspired network of tradespeople working, collaborating together, and demonstrating to the community what handmade processes, creatively designed goods, and artistic collaborations bring to a community. I would say outside financial support would be a very economically viable situation for a potential investor. Collectively, the 4 core businesses down here have 100 years of experience. We have no financial debts. We have incredible social capital within the community, and we know exactly what we're doing professionally. We are a ready turnkey tenant base for a future artisan district. We are also connected with many other affiliate trades businesses that would like to partner up with us. It's very important for artists to have low overhead so that they can focus on creating artwork, not doing railings, not bringing money in entirely and losing all of your resources and efforts to benign ironwork. I am a better artist than I am a fabricator, so I need to carve out time in my life where I'm able to pursue those goals. And those goals are all about impacting our community, engaging with my surroundings, and creating a dialogue about environmentalism, about politics, about our time and place here in the world. For me to do that effectively, I need to have fairly low overhead, a space where I can focus, and the time and means to concentrate on my sculpture. For me to do that, unfortunately, requires keeping my overhead low and likely building a shop and building my own equity somewhere else. One of the greatest concerns I have, just aside from us potentially becoming dispersed within the community collectively, is that some of these businesses may not have the energy to start all over again and put a shingle up all over again without the stability of a long-term lease. What Bellingham and Bellinghamsters may lose with the redevelopment of this area is a core creative artisan hub where people can walk off a bike path, step into an open door, and see creative processes that they've never seen before, find inspiration on how things are made, trades that are becoming more challenging to find, are nearing a level of extinction, blacksmithing, black and white photography, refurbishing old bicycles into beautiful commuting vehicles, native plants and landscaping, environmental restoration. These are all things that impact people's lives in a really wonderful way. Not to mention that when we all get together and we collaborate on large events, we host an opportunity for other artists to come in to celebrate their processes and what they do within the community, and for our community to step in and find inspiration and to realize what it takes to make something that's one of a kind, creative, and to go home with a sense of security that within their community something beautiful exists and is happening.
Who can live in the culture of the Southwest or Northwest and not know that the Plantas Nativa LLC sign must have to do with native plants? On the corner of East Laurel Street and North State Street is the environmentalist's dream, the quest to preserve the native plants of the great Northwest. Nature lovers from here and far come here to purchase, then take and plant, and in so doing save trees and shrubs and ancient plants and flowers that may otherwise be overrun by strange invasions of foreign growing things.
I think we definitely have a presence in the community. We're one of the only retail nurseries that has exclusively native plants in Bellingham. So that is unique. There's 5 of us who work at Plantas Nativa, including Bay, the owner. If I had a magic wand, I would make Plantas Nativa and all this community last forever. I think that the location is definitely important for this business, and the fact that there's kind of this concentrated community of artists and like-minded people here. It draws people who have the same interests and want to support local business and sustainable, native plants are part of the solution and making the community what it is. I think it's called the Alley District. I don't know a whole lot about the history of this area, but like I said, I was born and raised in Bellingham, and I can remember these structures and this community kind of being present for a long time. When I was a pretty little kid, there were people doing art and being creative in this area of Bellingham. So it has a substantial history. We offer a selection of native plants, but on top of that, we also offer installation services. So there's a whole nother side to Plantas Nativa that centers around doing native plant installations on properties, and we do that's kind of a restoration component of the business. Bay does consultation, so he will go out to properties and look at the location and choose the right species to be able to thrive in whatever habitat, kind of localized habitat they have. We also have mulch, which is a good planting medium to get new native plants going. But yeah, we have around 150 different species to choose from, which is a really substantial selection. I am not entirely sure if we're looking to expand, or if Bay is looking to expand his business. I know that it's going to change a little bit when this space goes away, because we won't necessarily have the nursery space anymore. This nursery may no longer be present. There is another location down in Mount Vernon that is much smaller, and it's located within a salvage business, so it's kind of just like a little subsection of that business down there, and there's nobody that works there during the day. It's just like, you know, people that are in the store can go into the little plant area. So that's going to be a big change, and I'm not entirely sure how Bay is going to evolve. I think that the consultation and restorations installation side of Plantis Nativa is definitely going to live on, but as far as the Bellingham nursery location, that may be something that is no longer here when this property is gone. I think that people sometimes avoid native plants because they maybe don't realize how beautiful they can be in a garden setting. It's easy to, you know, think that the native species aren't, you know, they don't have as nice of flowers and they're not as like showy, and maybe they're not. So for some people, I think that's a really important part of gardening, is having big, fragrant, nice flowers. But there's definitely stuff that can adequately fill that role in a garden that is, you know, naturally around Washington State, and we have some of that stuff. But yeah, I think that just also a lack of knowledge about native species and not really realizing that they are great options for gardens. I think that, yeah, really mostly people just don't necessarily think about it because it maybe, you know, isn't at the front of their mindset when they think of having a big, nice, beautiful garden.
As we now leave the legendary Alley District, the area known on Bellingham city records as Block 52, what is to become of it? It has been ever thus with the influx of people and commerce. The towns have swallowed up their mills, their stables, and their carriages, their small purveyors and craftsmen, their artists and artisans, in favor of places for people to live. This small area, with its collection of the same, seems destined to be crowded out by progress and by its own aging. For so many friends and partners who have common passions for community, for environment, and for the pure beauty of everyday things, the opportunities to duplicate this vibrant contribution seems remote. As we have said, let therefore these images and these voices stand as a record of it.